Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today it's gonna be a Sam episode.
Woohoo!
I get to listen. I'm so excited, guys.
It's a rare occasion that I take over the wheels here, but I'm excited actually about this one.
Good. All right, what are we doing today, Sam?
So, like all of my other stories, it came to me from YouTube. But my ears triggered when I heard Oregon, and I was like, let's do it. So, today we're going to focus on some murders that are here in our backyard in Oregon. So even in the Pacific Northwest, where we have a legacy of serial killers that are absolutely chilling, this case could be probably one of the more unsettling cases in Oregon's history. It's a story of a murder, deception, and an eerie farm that would eventually be uncovered as the site of some very gruesome crimes.
Oh, I'm excited. I wonder if I know this one. You said farm, and now I'm piqued.
Yeah, I was curious if you'd know this one. I had never heard of this, and it wasn't too long ago that all of this took place. So I'm sort of like, definitely, I had to have made national news. I feel like this one.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't grow up around here though, so and I feel like I didn't, especially when I was younger, watch the news. It wasn't until I was an adult in the military that I even started watching anything, and I didn't live here for a long time. So even if it was national news, I might not have heard of it. If it was only local news, definitely.
it's
But
one of the ones that you might have just like, I feel like kids would have talked about it in high school.
yeah, see, I wasn't here for that.
Yeah. I mean, no matter where you lived.
Yeah, no, I don't know. We had our own
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
problems where I lived.
And you weren't in high school at the time either,
Yeah.
because I wasn't either.
Okay, I can't wait. Let's do this.
All right. So, Susan Monica, a woman with a dark past and a secluded property, would soon become infamous for the disgusting events that transpired at her farm. You do?
I do. Let's do this.
Oh man, cool. I love that. You can like probably
It's been,
maybe fill in some of the gaps.
it's been a long time since I've heard of her, but I have heard of her. I was wondering, I was going to say, is this a woman? But I didn't want to say, I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
So, stay with us while we unravel the tale that begins with a missing persons report that leads investigators to a series of horrifying discoveries on a remote farm. What they uncover defied explanation and shocked an entire community to its core. So, born in California in 1948, Susan Monica was originally named Stephen Buchan. Monica's life was far from ordinary. She served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War, earning an honorable discharge, and later transitioned into living as a woman. So I looked up like why she was dishonorably discharged, or not dishonorably, honorably discharged. And I couldn't find it. I was realizing I should just reach out to you and ask how do I look that up because I was curious. Post Vietnam, I know there was a lot of honorable discharges that weren't so honorable.
Oh, so anytime, I mean, there can be lots of reasons, but if you end your military contract, so if she served and was like, I'm going to serve 3 years, at the end of the 3 years, you're honorably discharged. I'm honorably discharged from the military because I ended my contract
Right.
under the right circumstances. There weren't any like punitive actions. The only time that they do like other than honorable or dishonorable, other than honorable, that's usually disciplinary issues, nothing actually super major. And a lot of times they'll shift it to honorable later on, which is a weird thing that they do. And then dishonorable is usually people that are pending cases or have big issues. They go AWOL, things like that, absent without leave. So it's actually pretty hard to get anything other than an honorable discharge.
Okay. I just know like the Vietnam War has a history of,
Yeah, they still were all honorable discharge. So after they came back, if they were done with their service, then they would honorably discharge them.
okay.
Mhm.
Well, maybe it's as simple as that then.
Yeah.
Well, her transition to a woman occurred during a time when support for transgender individuals was minimal and societal stigma was quite high. Experts have noted that individuals undergoing such like significant personal and societal changes may face elevated mental health risks, including depression, anxiety, and social isolation. By no means am I implying that her transition turned her into a murderer. But it's worth pointing out that a stressful event like this in life, where you're lacking support, can potentially create some mental changes that could be seriously detrimental to who you become as a human.
Mhm.
So, after her military service, Monica found success in a field of engineering. However, despite her professional accomplishments, she later sought a quieter life from the bustling city. In 1991, she bought a 20-acre farm in Windermere, Oregon, a remote area surrounded by dense woodlands. Monica's property was underdeveloped at the time, and she quickly set about building a home, a barn, and establishing a small business, White Queen Construction, where she built wrought iron fences and gates. At first glance, Monica's life seemed pretty uneventful. She raised pigs and chickens and led a simple life on her farm. But as we'll soon see, this farm would be the setting of a horrific crime. So, it leads us to 2013. Monica hired a man named Robert Haney. He was a handyman who responded to a Craigslist ad. Robert was tasked with helping Monica around the farm, including buildings, creating a house from the ground up. According to Sean Lemenes, a former employee of Monica's, Robert was a hardworking man who did whatever Monica asked him to do. However, by December of 2013, Robert's family began to grow concerned. They hadn't heard from him for a couple of months. His son, Jesse Haney, told reporters that they knew something was wrong when they visited the property and noticed that Robert's belongings were still there.
I was just gonna say, didn't he move in when he helped as a handyman? He was like a live-in handyman, not just a like drive 9 to 5 and go home, right? He
Yeah,
lived there.
yeah, he lived there. This property was like 20 acres.
Hmm.
There was multiple like trailers surrounded the main house
Hmm.
on the premise, and I think she had like multiple employees who probably lived there.
Yeah, employees and tenants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and they, not to like just overarch everyone who worked for her, but
Hmm.
it seemed sort of like a halfway house of type of people, like people who had somehow not been able to quite make it necessarily in society for one reason or another, but
Hmm.
they needed a different place to work that didn't have quite the same social norms. That's what it sounded like, at
Hmm.
least.
Okay.
Um, so when his son showed up, his dog was still running around and his leather jacket remained on the property. It raised alarms for the family, and they filed a missing persons report like months after he had last been heard from. When they confronted Monica, she claimed that Robert had simply just disappeared. She said he had left by his own accord after like an emotional crisis. She didn't explain really what it was. She just said that he sort of like broke down and he just took off.
Hmm.
But the investigators soon would uncover something much darker. So, detectives picked up that missing persons report from Jackson County's Sheriff Department and began their investigation. Eventually, they found that Robert's EBT card had been used at like a Walmart in Grants Pass. So they looked up the camera footage and they noticed that it was Monica who had been using the card.
How far away is Grants Pass to where she lives?
It, I, I think about an hour.
Okay.
It,
I didn't know if she was going on her way, cover her tracks type of situation, or just
I think it
use
was
this
like
town.
the place that you do like your shopping.
Mm,
It
okay.
wasn't really a well thought out like use of his own personal money.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, it doesn't seem like she's really well thought out in a lot of her planning
Yeah.
the more we get to know her.
Potentially not pre-planned.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they went to Monica's property to investigate, Detective Eric Henderson was the main detective on the case, and he recalled that, quote, the property was eerie. There was a very strong odor there. I could smell a lot of decay. I'm thinking to myself, as we're pulling up, are we in the twilight zone here? End quote. The site was cluttered with vehicles, debris, and makeshift structures, giving it a strange, unsettling atmosphere, but nothing prepared them for what they would find next. Upon executing their search warrant, investigators discovered a human leg in a catchment pond on Monica's property. The leg appeared to have been severed mid-femur, and it was clear that it wasn't an animal bone. This was the first tangible evidence of foul play. When Monica was then confronted with this discovery, she offered a bizarre and disturbing explanation. Monica claimed that in the fall of 2013, she walked down to her pig pen and found her pigs in a feeding frenzy. When she investigated what was happening, she said she saw Robert Haney lying there, his body being devoured by pigs. Quote, "He was being eaten, what I believed to be alive. I don't know how he got there, but I couldn't stop them. I put him out of his misery. I do that for my animals, and this is the first time I've ever had to do that for a human being. And I knew it was wrong, but if it were one of my pigs suffering out there, I would have done the same thing." She then left Robert's body in the pen for several days for the pigs to finish eating, before later placing the rest of his remains in garbage bags and burying them around her property.
Why wouldn't she have just let the pigs eat everything? They can.
I know.
What?
I
I don't get that.
I don't either. I've always wondered that.
That's so, I don't know.
First of all, this was sort of the first that I knew that pigs will eat
Eat a person?
anything.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they'll eat. There's statistics out there on how fast pigs will eat a person or a certain amount of meat, and they can chew through the bones and everything, from what I understand. If people joke about that being the easiest way to dispose of somebody is have a pig farm.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not great, but I know that there's actual statistics out there, and I know that they'll eat the body, so I'm just surprised that, she decided to move said body and they found the leg. Also, was the search warrant, did they get that because she used the EBT card? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that allowed them, because she was at that point, it's investigating identity theft.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were able to go in and see if they were going to try to piece together any more clues on why she's stealing his property.
Yeah.
And she was continuing to receive those benefits on that card.
Oh, okay.
So it definitely cued them to this card is still being used, and
Fraudulently.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the pig thing, man. I feel like mobsters should just own pig farms.
I think some of them did,
I bet
or
you're.
they had ones that were
Oh my
associated
God.
with them in
This
history. If we look at that, I think there are several instances of cases like
is so gross.
that.
So when they were curious why they actually found the leg just sort of sitting there, Monica states later that an animal must have dragged it out of the pond. Again, why she didn't just let him finish, I don't know.
That's fine.
She clearly isn't thinking straight in a lot of these circumstances, so I'm not too shocked, honestly.
Or she didn't want to eat a pig that ate a human.
That could be too, but I don't know. I don't think she was raising these pigs to eat.
Then what would you raise them for?
I'm not sure, but she was very defensive of her pigs. They were like her children. I think I end up mentioning at some point along the lines here that she was so concerned about the well-being of her pigs versus her own well-being, and was very concerned that they were going to be euthanized after the police discovered this.
Then I don't think the pigs touched him at all.
So in court, a chilling tape confession was presented where Monica admitted they just needed something to eat. She further described the scene, saying, "I saw his guts hanging out of him, and they were getting at him from the top to bottom. Some were just licking the blood off of his head." Monica's story seemed odd, and when further questions were posed to her, she seemed, like I was saying, more concerned about the outcome of her pigs and if they would suffer the death sentence than her well-being. However, she revealed next that even more potential bodies could be found on the property. Monica admitted there was another, revealing that she had buried another body under a spot marked on a map that she drew.
So, is she under arrest at this point? Like, is that her official statement, or are they just talking to
It
her
was
at the
her
house?
that was her official statement. When she initially was investigated by this, they brought her in for questioning, and she stated the first round of interviews, she stated that she had no idea how he fell into the pig pen, and that he like just was there, and she could tell he was still alive because he was like moaning and breathing heavily, and so she shot him to put him out of his misery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the story obviously is wild, and insane. So they continued to question her, obviously. And after the like second and third round of questioning, she started to open up and tell police, well, yeah, maybe there's going to be more people you find.
Oh, okay. Um, and then does she say like why he was dealing with the pigs or near the pigs?
No.
Like, if he's a handyman and he's building something, why is he playing with pigs?
She had no explanation for why he would have been near the pigs. They asked, like, how would he have been down? How could he have gotten hurt? And all she continued to say was that, like, with this man, she didn't know how he wound up there.
Mm,
She stated he had an issue with alcohol, and
yeah,
maybe there was something related to his alcohol consumption that led him to that place at
yeah,
that time. But she was not, she continued to say she didn't know how he wound up in the pig pen.
yeah.
And
So
she's
basically, she's trying to imply that he has a mental health problem and he's been drinking. So he probably just stumbled into the pig
right.
pen
And he fell down
just,
and they started
and they
eating him.
started eating him, which I have never heard of pigs just eating
Also, I've
somebody and him
never,
not standing
I was
the
gonna say, I've never heard of someone being so drunk that a pig could bite into your stomach and start ripping your guts out,
and
and you
you're just
just
like,
lay there
all right, like
like,
this is
ugh,
happening. Yeah. Oh,
a bad hangover.
yeah.
Like,
That's
like,
uncomfortable. Okay.
no.
Okay.
Um, so the second body that Monica started to refer to was that of Stephen Delcinio. He was a handyman who had worked on her property in 2012. So, yet again, another handyman that she had hired. Monica claimed that in the summer of that year, two of her guns had gone missing. She said that she found the guns in Stephen's belongings and confronted him. This allegedly led to like a violent altercation where Monica claimed that Delcenio like initially attempted suicide after he was confronted. He just stood in front of her and she said that he just grabbed the pistol and tried to kill himself
Hmm.
while standing in front of her. She then stated that it was an unsuccessful attempt, so then he unloaded the gun into his head. She states, I know you won't believe me because I don't even believe me. But when he shot himself the first time, it didn't work. So then he unloaded the gun into his head. I know it isn't believable. Which
Correct. I don't know of anybody who can shoot themselves many times in the head.
it was like actually humorous listening to her say this.
Yeah.
Because she says it so matter of factly, like, I know you're not going to believe me because, quite frankly, I don't believe me when I'm saying this. Like, you can just hear her saying, like, the actual thoughts in her head of, like, this is so stupid that I'm even going to say this out loud, but I'm going to just say it. Like,
I feel like if you've committed a murder like that, you really need to get like pre-plan your story and one that actually makes some sort of sense. Like it can't just like this just feels like it's off the cuff. Like she's like, he probably shot himself, right?
uh,
And then he had to do it multiple times because you're gonna, if you find him, there's gonna be many bullet holes.
100%.
And you're like,
She was, like, coming up with this
yeah,
as they're, like, sitting there watching her, and you can see it. You see her, like, pause and think about, like, okay, how can I explain the
yeah,
multiple
many bullet
gunshot wounds in this guy's head?
self-defense.
And then she's like, well, you're not going to believe it, but
Yeah.
he did it to himself.
Oh, I would have been like, he was attacking me, so I shot him, but then I freaked out, disposed of the body because I thought you wouldn't believe me for that. Because she's like a not a petite
No.
person. She still looks very masculine.
She's,
Like, the
yeah,
features were not corrected, I guess. Like, there's no femininity.
it was a different time when she
I
transitioned,
know
that's
that's
for sure.
true. That's
Well,
true.
I'm just saying for sure she hadn't gone to Hollywood and, like, got
Gotten all
everything,
the
the whole head to toe fixed. She just basically grew her hair out, it looks like.
yeah,
Um,
that's probably that's sounds like the times, yeah, that
yeah.
would be right.
And even, like, her voice is still quite deep when they're interrogating her, and
Yeah,
so I'm inclined to think that she didn't go through the, hormonal treatments and things along those lines, but more just identified as female and
called it a day.
yep,
Okay. Okay.
yep. So that does put you into the frame of mind that this woman was quite large in stature.
Yeah. So
So
formidable is what I would say because I was
yes,
saying like if she claimed self-defense and then I was like, well, I mean, you'd be an equal opponent.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
That's the word I'm going to say.
And turns out that you would be better in an interrogation because she eventually comes around to your story,
Yes.
but only after Stephen's body was discovered and he had shotgun wounds to his head, not a pistol. Monica then stated that there was still the altercation, that he had stolen the pistol and the shotgun from her, and they continued to fight. She chased him to a barn. A shot went out up into the air or into the universe and it hit him in the head. And it didn't quite kill him. So she saw that he was suffering. So she then gave him one more shot to the head with the shotgun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Once you find out that's a shotgun, there's only one angle that you can really, depending on the size of the shotgun, shoot yourself. And you're definitely not doing it.
You're not more than once. You probably
At
also,
least not very often does that happen that you do it more than once.
it would be pretty impressive.
I think I've actually seen a attempted suicide where they've shot themselves twice, but obviously he died, so it's successful. So
Yeah.
it seems unlikely.
Side note, I've seen an attempted suicide with a crossbow where he shot himself twice, which was one of the most interesting moments of my nursing career ever. Working in the ICU. I'll never forget this man rolling up to us, and the ED had like cut the bow, like the tip of the bow and the
But it was
feathers
still
off,
in.
but it was still in his head. It was like when Game of Thrones was on.
Yeah,
And he like it looked.
just like that.
It looked like he was a prop from like the show. It was. He also had the first attempt he had made went up just the side of his face and
Wow.
like split the side of his face open so that he had 126 sutures in that side of his face, which were so beautiful. I'll never forget the image of this in my
Yeah.
mind. Like the most impeccable plastic surgery. Um, but he comes up with this arrow in his head, and the CT scan, you can just see this like line right
Yeah.
through his head. It was wild. He survived.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. I have heard of like multiple gunshots, but it's usually two. I don't think I've ever heard of anything more than that in an attempted suicide. So when you said multiple times, I can and emptying the gun, I'm like, well, usually they're at least five or six, depending what type it is. I'm thinking like a revolver style. I guess it doesn't have to be a revolver, but
Right.
there's gonna be more than two.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, ah, that that seems highly unlikely.
It
But the self-defense, see, that would have worked. She should have started with that.
I know
Self-defense.
she should have,
Yeah.
but she was not that quick. Instead, she said that this man shot himself multiple times in his head, um, with the wrong type of gun too, which
Yeah, which
is like, oh, come on,
yeah.
you got to get it straight.
You have to know what you're going for
Yeah,
there. Well, maybe she couldn't remember who she shot with what, you
that
know?
could be true
Mm,
also, actually, for sure.
okay.
Um, so after showing the police to his body, Monica stated that she dismembered his body before feeding portions of his remains to the pigs. She said they were doing their thing. The rest of him is out there somewhere. An Oregon State Police anthropologist later testified that Delcinio had suffered multiple gunshot wounds to the head and Hanny's leg showed signs of dismemberment with an axe. It is unclear if he was alive or dead when she started feeding him to the pigs, however.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Which is pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've like thought about that too. Like he had two shotgun wounds to his head. So
Yeah.
he's definitely dead after she shoots him. So it makes me wonder, like, if they're unsure if like he was fed to the pigs, if he might have been alive. Like, did she like drug this man and potentially start to?
Well, I think if there's like the gunshot wounds already there, he might still be breathing, but I doubt that it was life sustaining, and he was probably like the function of the brain probably wasn't there, but
Heart was still
yeah,
beating.
the rest of your system still kind of going right at that moment is my like thinking about it anatomically and like the wounds and what they would do to the body if he was still alive. I'm gonna guess that it wasn't for very long and he was not awake or alert or that the buckshot or the shot had done their damage
Right.
in the structures of the brain. So I'm
Yeah.
sure, but still, there's a potential that he could still feel pain if he's still
Oh, for
alive. You
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not
And
if
it's just so like it's sick and twisted in general that you're gonna feed anyone to pigs, but like it's exceptionally sick and twisted to like notice that someone's like still breathing
mm-hmm.
and then watch your pigs like devour them.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beyond comprehension to me.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it's very like backwoods farmer mentality there.
I don't know. Farmers don't usually feed live animals to their
That's
other
true. That's
animals.
true. They don't. So
Although people feed snakes live animals, so
so maybe it's very like
I don't know.
reptile own mentality.
I don't know. I think there's a difference when it's a human, though. And looking at them and knowing, because definitely, I mean, definitely she was there to kill them because if we're shooting them in the head and feeding them to pigs, there's no goal for like life. There was no like, oops, this happened, or heat of the moment. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna kill you and then I'm gonna feed you the pigs to get rid of the evidence.
Right. It's yeah. It's just it's such a sad way to go.
Yeah. And so, some of the bodies had the dismemberment with and that they didn't know did they know if that was postmortem
They none of the
injuries?
injuries
So the pigs
were
and the
yeah,
axe could have been either
at
or.
any point. Yeah.
Okay.
Um it was definitely unclear by autopsy results, but again they were also getting at these remnants of a body
Months and
years
years later.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just mentioned that like it's potentially by what they were able to find unclear if he
Yeah.
was alive or dead.
And I'm sure her statement's not helping, or you're like, can you just tell us what for real happened? Can
Right.
we just know at this point? Like, we know you did it. You're gonna go to prison. Like, just
Right.
give it up.
Just tell us what is going on
We
here.
all want to know the whys, damn it.
Yeah. So oh, another side note that I found interesting, which I think sort of goes back to something I was saying at the beginning, is Hanny, this second guy that she uh, admits to killing, like no one ever filed a missing persons report for him.
Hmm.
No one ever knew that he was missing. They never suspected anything potentially was awry with him. So it sort of goes to show that that's who she hired out at her farm. A
Yeah.
lot of times were people who had those.
Maybe like a drug past or a prison
Yeah,
past.
yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. I mean, if everything's all run down, I don't think that you're going to get upstanding's not the right word, but like people that are close with family to come live out in these shanties. You're going to
Yeah.
have to find somebody who's
Although
thinks that that's a step up, not a step down.
my dad would do it just to try to fix it up.
Just to try to fix
He'd be like, "This is awesome. This is great." Uh,
For a long period of time. No.
you probably want to go live out there, but
See?
that would be like his eyes would light up with like, oh, there's so many projects here for me.
Yeah,
I'll
but
never
fixing
get bored.
something and living
Yeah, it's totally
in
different
yeah, in all of the
for sure.
squalors, it's different.
Yeah. So on January 14th of 2014, Monica was arrested. The charges against her included 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of first-degree abuse of the corpse, and 1 count of identity theft. Her pigs were euthanized, and investigators spent weeks searching her property, digging through more than 50 holes. Um,
And so the pigs were probably euthanized because they couldn't determine if they ate human meat, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
because they can't sell them to a farmer to then like either commercially or even privately use that meat. They'd have to be not only euthanized, but just euthanized and buried, or like they can't be used.
Yeah, it would be like it's sad to me that we euthanize animals who like have a tangled history with humans,
Hmm.
especially when it's like wild animals like bears or cougars or whatnot. It actually always breaks my heart because
Yeah.
I'm like, that's their instinct. That's what they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
But in this case, I was thinking, I was like, even if you were to give these pigs to like a rescue,
Hmm.
who would like, oh my God, I don't think I could ever like rescue an animal knowing that they ate a human.
Yeah. And there aren't, I don't think there's a, at that time anyway, I know there's more and more rescues out there that do horses, pigs, all sorts of animals. I don't think in the like the mid, that must have been just ramping up that we had all these rescues because I feel like it's just been in the last like 5, maybe 10 years that we're getting more and more rescues for those types of animals.
Yeah,
Before it was just kind of the domesticated, dogs and cats and stuff like that. But the bigger animals are harder.
I think at least this, I have no research to back this up, but I have a friend who owned a pig and it
Hmm.
was a big pig.
Hmm.
She was like, I would say right around 100 pounds. They lived in a studio in Seattle.
That's not that big for a pig.
I mean, it was big considering the fact that this
They're in a
pig
studio. Got it.
was also sold as a teacup pig.
Oh no.
So I learned a lot about this actually. And this, like, I guess a lot of people, when social media had a huge uptick and like teacup pigs became really cute and people
Hmm.
loved them, people would be sold pigs all the time as like these teacup
And they
pigs.
were just baby pigs.
And they were just these baby pigs that would grow into massive animals.
Uh-huh.
And then they would, at that point, need to be rehomed.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of rescues popped up around that time
Yeah.
when people started to realize, like, oh, there's just abandoned pigs in the middle of the city, because people
Yeah.
realized, oh, crap, this thing's huge.
Yeah. Because I feel like when I was younger, it was only farmers and like vets that would rehome them essentially, but they weren't rescuing. They would be used for whatever
Right.
that farm's purpose was for. So if it was a meat pig, like it's gonna
It
go to
become
slaughter.
bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's had, like I said, if it's eaten human meat, I don't think that it can.
Right.
So then it would have had to be euthanized. Or if they did actually eat people and then they were, I think that there's like a propensity that they will try to do it again once they've tasted that meat. At least that's like a, I don't know if that's fact or fiction, but I know I've heard that before. Again, I've never looked it up. So I don't know the
You've
answer. If
never Googled that, if
I've
that's real or
never
not?
Googled if that's real. I have heard it. So if it's real, that might have been a reason.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I am not an expert in pigs,
That would be super fascinating. We need to get back with the, like,
the pig things.
if that's true, yeah, fact or fiction
Yeah.
episode on pigs. Huh.
Oh no.
Who knew this would turn into that?
I know.
Oh man. Um, okay, so they in 2015,
Mhm.
while we figure out if pigs actually
Yeah.
it, prefer human flesh or not.
Oh, it does also say pigs can not eat a whole human body alone. Generally, a hog can eat 6 to 8 pounds of food in a day.
Oh.
Yeah. And then they can't chew the larger bones of a human body. They could. Oh.
See, if I would have done a little extra research on that, I would have tried to determine how heavy these guys were.
How big they were.
To determine, like, because, you know, I didn't think of this until now, but potentially the reason why she stopped letting her pigs eat on them is it was taking too long.
Yeah.
And she clearly loved these pigs.
Do we know how many pigs she had?
She had 8.
Oh. Oh, I can't math. Okay.
So, I mean, that would be like 42 pounds of
Yeah.
meat a day
Hmm.
if they're eating at the high end.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if she ever had people over, she'd have to worry about if they've eaten the whole
Oh, yeah,
body yet.
for sure.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, having a dinner party and people want to see your pig pen? And
No. Like, are you sure you want to go out there?
yeah, I
You might see some things.
can't imagine she had a lot of dinner parties out there.
No. No, it looks like a compound from the
It's
air.
it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Um, it reminds me of like every scene you see in like a movie where they want to depict someone who lives on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a lot of maintenance went into that. She definitely needed those handymen, so she probably shouldn't have killed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rude.
Yep. So her trial began in 2015, in April of 2015, and it lasted 6 days. The prosecution highlighted Monica's evolving stories and the gruesome details of her crimes. During the trial, Monica's attorney, Garen Pedimont, acknowledged that she did indeed shoot these 2 men. There's no denying that. But then he argued that the state could not prove that it was murder and argued that she was acting in self-defense on both occasions. Um, Monica also, I know you shake your head,
I
but
know.
it's it
Self-defense twice, huh? With
it's
your handymans.
really difficult to argue too that, like, I guess maybe the first time there's like you freak out, I just killed someone. Oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
somehow your brain goes to let me get rid of the evidence. And I've seen this before. Let me see if my
Mhm.
pigs will eat them. 2 times is like, okay, that would be a really difficult story to sell.
Yeah.
It'd be definitely incredibly difficult. Um, I found this incredibly fascinating. I didn't see any clips of this or like um, would like to have heard or like read more about this, but Monica also played an active role in her defense. Unfortunately, this is before the time that they record, all of these court cases, so
Yeah.
there's not actual video footage of this,
Hmm.
but there are transcripts. And she even herself cross-examined Detective Eric Henderson. Um, and he was testifying about her confession. And while she was cross examining him, she openly admitted that she wished she could have fed him to her pigs as well.
She's like, I wish you were number 3.
So that didn't play in her favor for
Hmm.
sure. Um, I mean, I think as a lawyer, you sort of have to let your client do what they will. But
Yeah.
man, if I had a lawyer, I'd hope they'd say, sit your ass down.
Yeah.
You're not getting up there.
Yeah.
So just an hour after deliberation, the jury convicted Susan Monica on all counts.
Hmm.
She was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. During her interrogation, Monica remarked, I do not value human life very much. The only thing wrong with this planet is that there's people on it.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it just sort of goes to show that, like, she valued the little world she lived in and she loved her animals
Hmm.
and probably shouldn't have hired people to come hang out with her.
Hmm. Um, I have a random question.
Yeah,
Since she's in Oregon, but it was 2014,
yeah.
right when this happened?
2015 when she was convicted.
2015 when convicted. What prison did she go to?
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, you don't know if she's in Coffee Creek or the male's prison?
I don't know that.
Mm. Oh
Look it up.
my God.
The fun
Okay.
part about Sam episodes is we get to Google
I
things
may have
while
to.
we go.
I wonder what.
Um,
So is Susan Monica her legal name?
it is.
Okay. Well, I'm curious about that. And then she really only got 50 years for killing two people.
Yeah, I was shocked by that too, actually, which then made me wonder, like, what about the other crimes?
Well,
Like,
I'm sure they're all combined as one because the abuse is just for the mm, dismemberment and most likely and moving the bodies around. Um, I'm getting on ODOC's offender search
okay, I
just so you know,
was gonna say,
as we're trying to talk. Um, and then I thought identity theft actually held higher charges, like that they were bigger.
I know that's why I was sort of shocked that there was no additional penalties for the other crimes that were committed. Really feels like there was 25 years for one life and 25 years for the other.
Mhm.
Potentially, they decided not to go into the details regarding that, but
She is housed at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, which is the female prison out here in
okay.
Oregon. Um, so it's considered a life sentence, um, just so you know. And because so it's probably 20. Well, that's weird. So on here, the other sentences have already dropped off. So the only ones that you can see according to the Oregon Department of Corrections that are still active are the two murder sentences. They both began 2015 with a sentence of life. Um, and that means that it's like 25 years for each one,
Right.
would potentially be what it is because um, 25 is our life sentence here in this state. Why
That's
25 years is the life sentence? I don't know. But that's if they get life with parole after 25 years, they can attempt parole. So she probably got two, and they're probably, um, oh my goodness, my brain just broke. Anyway,
consecutive.
yep, thank you. Instead of
See, I listen.
instead of concurrent.
Right.
So then in 50 years. But yeah, 76 at this point in her life, and definitely has not taken medication for uh,
Oh,
transition.
no. Definitely not.
She looks just like a bald old man right now.
Yeah, like a grandpa.
Yeah. Yep.
That's sort of unfortunate.
It is. But I was curious because I know for a while, I mean, I that there's inmates now housed in Coffee Creek that are started at OSP, OSCI,
Mhm.
the male prisons, and have transitioned since then back over to
Coffee
Coffee
Creek.
Creek.
Where is Coffee Creek? Do you know?
I cannot think of the city that it's in. Oh my goodness.
Eastern,
No,
Western.
it's the road, girl.
Oh, okay. That's what I was sort of wondering. I
Yeah,
feel like we keep all of our criminals nice and close.
kinda. We have a lot around here.
Yeah, we do.
And Coffee Creek is the intake center, so everybody goes through there anyway. They also house a couple males that are in segregation that have dialysis needs so that they can keep a dialysis nurse there because
Mm,
that's where their chair is.
interesting.
Yeah, because we don't have chairs everywhere, and obviously there's needs of every population, so they have to keep, I think, one or two there to keep a nurse on the payroll
Mhm.
and working the chair in case they get any, like,
Right.
but yeah, that's where it is. Wilsonville.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, just up the road. They all go there.
Wilsonville. I'm like, can't even imagine where that would be in that
I
community.
know I've passed it several times, and I'm always like, oh, there it is. But I feel like it's like to like a swampy area.
I always think of Wilsonville as like a such a bougie neighborhood.
Yeah, the outskirts are not.
Yeah. See, I have relatives that lived there at one point and they lived in a quite a bougie home.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm like,
why.
my brain goes to like, oh, that's like the rich Portlanders who move out of the city.
I mean, we're also weird. Our penitentiary's in the middle of the city
I know
here
it's
in the state
strange.
capital, but that's because it started on the outskirts
Yeah.
and the city grew around it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It probably was at one point.
It was.
Nowhere near as developed. Obviously, nowhere near
Oh,
as
yeah,
developed.
there's pictures of it. It looks like it's out in the country.
Yeah.
And then Felony Flats um, started to grow around it where all the, spouses would come and they moved in right next to
Felony Flats.
the road's right next to the state penitentiary. They call it Felony
Oh my
Flats. You didn't know
God.
that?
No.
Yeah, because it was literally like wives and girlfriends and family members would all move in there so they could see the inmates faster. And okay, the sordid history, OSP. There was at one point that they were so overcrowded that they would let certain inmates out for the
Like,
weekend,
oh my God.
and another inmate would take like their bed while they were gone, and so they would go stay with their family on Felony Flats and then port back in later. And they had like this cyclical like
That's
rotation of beds because they were so overcrowded. And it's got a dark history. OSB has a dark history. We have like murder for hire within the prison there. There's a whole thing. But yeah, that's how it started.
the Felony Flats. It sounds like a nickname of like the apartments like a guy I would have known in New York lives in or something like that. Like I can just hear like my buddies being like, "Oh yeah, let's head over to Felony Flats tonight."
I
And
didn't know
be
you
like,
didn't know
"I
that.
know I didn't. That's great."
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There was somebody recently that, not like last 6 months recently, but somebody, I think we both mutually know, that was looking at places in that area, and it's still not very great.
Um,
And they were just like, you don't want to live here. Like, you are the wrong color
yeah,
to be here right now. And
yeah.
they're like, oh, sorry.
Oops.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Interesting. All
Oh my
right.
gosh.
I would love
The
to know
things you
who
don't
it
know.
was who was going to live there.
Yeah, I can't remember who it is. God, it was somebody like newer to our state.
Yeah,
Um, but I feel like we both
male or
knew
female.
female.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I that also reminds me of New York when I visited my ex-boyfriend. He owned a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, New York, which is like where Biggie's from.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. I got off the J train, walked down the stairs. Like Jamil had told me, like wait for me
Mm-hmm.
at the train
You
station.
didn't wait?
And I did, but I like came down the stairs from it thinking like that's what he meant. He meant like get off the train, just don't move from the subway stop. I'll be right there. But I get off the stairs and I had like three guys like beeline across the street to me and start talking to me. I was in cowboy boots and a jean skirt. And
Oh my God, here you
oh my
go.
God. And I will never forget, all of them were like, "You don't belong here. What's your name? What are you doing here? I think you took the wrong train. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?" And I was like, "No, no, no." That was like right before that community got gentrified and then
Yeah.
it flipped. I
Oh.
mean, it's still very diverse and an incredible, cool community, but it definitely got gentrified after that. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Sorry. Yeah, that was a good tangent. I like
it
it.
was a good one. I always love reminiscing about my New York times too. So wherever I can interject it, I'm happy to.
Alrighty.
All right. So, um, after like her conviction, um, there was like the detectives had a lot more to say about certain things that Susan had mentioned. And I guess at some point, Susan mentioned to the police that they shouldn't be shocked if they find like 17 other bodies scattered throughout her property. Um, but she wouldn't give any insight as to who these bodies potentially were and if like where they would be. Um, they found the remains of Hanny and Delcinio and numerous personal belongings, including a large pile of shoes and multiple different watches, but there was no other bodies ever discovered.
Oh,
I know. Detective Henderson, who is the lead detective on the case, said, "Take me on what she take on what she told me about the possibility of 17 other people being there. Was it true? I believe 100% that there are more people out there. We just haven't found them." So I would be inclined to believe that there's probably more people out there as well, especially based on the fact that the first person she killed was never reported missing.
hmm.
Um, so how many other people were out there that were working for her that just didn't have a family member to know, like, oh, they aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
They weren't checking in on the phones with them or whatnot. So I always found that a little interesting.
Oh. Um, do we know what happened to the farm after all this?
No,
Like, is it just in a state of ruin, or did it get? I think.
I could guess, but I don't actually know the answer to that.
I feel like I've heard that something happened to it, but I can't remember what it is. Huh. All right. That was my question.
Well, we could figure that out at some point too. But
Yeah.
I know it was like and quite remote. It was to the point of no return. That was one I did read that the like house and the structures on the property themselves were dismantled
Hmm.
because they were in such bad state of affairs. But as far as like who took ownership or what happened with the property, I'm not sure how that went about.
Yeah.
I would assume a bank took it and then
Yeah, probably.
figured out how to sell it.
There's
Um,
always another farmer.
yep. It's people with more pigs out there.
Yeah.
So, um, with that, that sort of concludes the dark and chilling, twisted mind of Susan Monica. It I'm sure there's plenty more details
Yeah.
involving her death, involving her murders, and potentially maybe one day it will discover more, depending on what happened to the farm.
Yeah.
Um,
We should write her a letter.
we should. I think that'd be great. I actually, when I was writing this, I was thinking like, oh man, I would love to talk to this woman.
I avoid females, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things I read is that she wrote a letter to one of her friends. This was after she was convicted, but she wrote a letter to one of her friends at Jackson County Jail that she
Mhm.
was initially at and signed it the the most beautiful murderer in Oregon. So I would imagine she's very like unique of a
Yeah.
human to correspond with and seems to not be too ashamed of what went down.
Well, maybe if we get some correspondence, we'll have an update for
Yeah.
everybody.
You know what's really shocking to me now that after seeing that picture that you
Hmm.
just showed me of her now, like watching those interrogation videos, it was only that was 15 years ago now?
Hmm.
Not even a little less than 15 years ago or a little more than 15 years ago.
2015, 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I guess, is when she was convicted, but um she looks so much older.
Hmm.
Like in the confession video, she has this like beanie hat on. You can't really see her hair at that point, but I've seen like the mug shots and she's got long hair that's like past her shoulders and looks like a truly, I mean, she looks quite butch in the sense that she hasn't really gone through a bunch of transitioning, but she still looks like she's in like her mid 40s to 50s in that photo to
Hmm.
me. Whereas now she looks
She
like,
looks 76.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Which is pretty incredible, actually, like
Yeah.
how different she appears in that short span of time.
Which is funny because I often joke with some of the people I talk to that they're in a time capsule because they don't like mature or they don't age as fast, it seems like. I'm like, oh my God, like you guys in prison just are there. You're in your little bubble. Could you not look so young? Like
Yeah,
the world has worn us down out here and you look youthful still.
I
And
know.
I am offended by it.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you.
that could be like a special facial remedy that someone could sell
Yeah.
to
But
the Hollywood people.
yeah.
Um, anyway, that is today's episode of There's Danger Here. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you enjoyed this one, please leave a review. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, never forget we aren't always at the top of the food chain. And to all of those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.